If you want to hear the details about Diana's time in Mulberry Hill Mental Hospital, then stick around to the end of this video. The last several decades have each birthed a horror icon. Michael Myers capped the 70s, Freddy Krueger slashed his way through the 80s, Ghostface dialed into the 90s, and Jigsaw tested movie audiences in the 2000s. And while the 10s had no shortage of iconic horror franchises, many of the antagonists were either invisible entities or characters not really seen for most of their respective movies. Although she only appeared in one movie to date, unlike all of the other names I mentioned, I think it's certainly possible to make the case for Diana Walter from Lights Out to be the face of horror in the 10s. Although many people will probably say Pennywise, who technically debuted in the 90s. But we've already covered Pennywise here on Horror History, so today we're gonna take a look into the shadows and analyze the entire story of Diana. To fully understand her journey, let's take it back once more to the 70s for her birth. Diana Walter was born in 1971. She suffered from a rare skin disorder that made her extremely sensitive to light. Like a ginger in July, Diana made sure to keep herself in the shade as much as possible. Although she is stated to have parents, it is possible she was adopted, because one article mentions that nobody knows where she came from. Of course, there were many stories about her. She was said to be evil and have the ability to get inside people's heads, and this seems to be the fate suffered by her parents or foster parents. When Diana was 13 years old, she was found locked in a basement with her father. On October 6, 1984, Diana was admitted to Mulberry Hill Mental Institution. Doctors there determined that her condition required heliotherapy, a form of treatment where a person is bathed in full-spectrum light, usually used to lessen the effects of diseases like psoriasis, eczema, and dermatitis. Diana, however, was no ordinary patient and began to display what doctors referred to as a history of violence during her stay at the institution. The first known incident was on February 9, 1985, when she assaulted a patient, leaving the person with a fractured radius and ulna. Another incident left a patient with a transverse radius fracture, and a third attack resulted in a lateral incision on another individual. On June 5, 1986, she inflicts what appears to be some kind of ribcage injury. There are many other patients assaulted, at least 13 more incidents, victims of scratching, bruising, broken bones, and more. Another incident was recorded on July 12th, and one that took place in April was especially nasty. The victim was found with arm bite marks and deep cuts that resulted in having to get 43 stitches inside and out. At some point during her stay, Diana met Sophie, a patient in the heliotherapy ward suffering from some form of mental illness, including extreme depression.
You met Diana at Mulberry Hill when you were taken there for your depression. Am I right?
Because Sophie's mind was already very weak, Diana easily got into her head and made her think that they were friends. Diana latched onto Sophie and developed a tight bond so that she would permanently ingrain herself into the young girl's mind. Taking a step back, the relationship between Diana and Sophie is an allegory for Sophie's depression. They met during a low point in Sophie's life. Sophie did not know where Diana came from, and they became best friends. In other words, the depression consumed her life. And like depression, Diana came back and hit Sophie the hardest just when she was starting to recover. This came in the form of an attack that crushed her left index and middle fingers. She had to be put in restraints following this incident and claims to have attacked Sophie because she was getting better, which of course would have resulted in her getting healthy and leaving the institution. At this point, an experimental therapy is performed on Diana involving 1200 watts of full spectrum light. The treatment caused her a great deal of pain and convulsion, just like me after every passing day of no baseball. The so-called therapy caused Diana to just disappear, and the doctors had no choice but to report her death. But to this day, there are still varying accounts on what happened. Going back to our analogy, therapy causes depression to disappear. For many years, Diana was gone, but she seemed to exist somewhere in Sophie's mind, seemingly her only connection to this world. During this time, Diana is locked in the darkest area of the house, the basement, where she leaves diary messages using fingerprints on the walls. This is another symbol for depression and mental illness. A person may appear to recover without actually getting rid of their illness. They can suppress it, push it to the depths of the back of their mind, and go on trying to live their lives without ever truly facing it. But the problem with this method is that it can come back stronger than ever. According to Dr. Crystalline Salters Pednault, if you've ever had an intense thought or feeling that you couldn't handle in the moment or felt overwhelmed by and tried to push it away, you've experienced emotional suppression for yourself. Research shows that it is not only ineffective in eliminating thoughts and feelings, but it may even worsen the situation. That appears to be exactly what happens with Sophie. In the late 90s, she's married with a daughter named Rebecca when Diana comes back, now in the form of this somewhat ghost-like creature. When Sophie starts talking to Diana again, it causes her to appear crazy, and her health takes a serious decline. This scares away Rebecca's father, causing him to abandon the family, and Diana takes great pride in the idea of getting Sophie by herself. She preys on loneliness.
Has she been social with anyone?
Someone keeps on coming over.
Good. Who?
Diana.
Rebecca, on the other hand, convinces herself that Diana isn't real, which was easier for her because none of the other adults in her life were gonna believe her about a creepy shadow lady that only shows up in the dark.
I'm gonna tell you something that nobody ever told me. I believe you.
But Rebecca eventually leaves her mother as well, and Sophie once again has to get professional help to get rid of Diana. This time she goes on antidepressants and talks to a psychiatrist. But like last time, Sophie is only able to suppress her, and years later, after Sophie remarries and has another kid, Diana rises up once again. In Southern California, in the modern day, Diana starts talking to Sophie once again and convinces her to feel bad for abandoning her all of those years ago. Sophie sinks into a deeper depression than ever before, and her family, who never sees Diana early on, thinks that she's going crazy again and talking to herself. Sophie's new husband, Paul Wells, is more committed than the previous guy, and instead of running, he looks into possible avenues to get her better. For Diana, this would mean going away again, and not wanting to be locked in the basement for a third time, Diana shows up at Paul's work to try to deter him, and she ends up scaring one of his employees, a woman named Esther, before eventually attacking Paul, breaking his bones and clawing his eyes out. Paul represented Sophie's support line, so taking him out was a big win for Diana.
I miss your dad. He made me feel strong.
The loss, as you can imagine, did not help with her condition, which was only worsened by the fact that she's off her medication and she refuses to see a therapist. Diana appears with increasing frequency to talk to Sophie each night, this time wanting to get a strong hold over her mind as not to be repressed and locked away again. From the point of view of Sophie's son, Martin, his mom is talking to herself because she's not taking her medication, until one night when he sees Diana in the closet. This represents the lack of coping skills in a patient of mental illness, which can lead to the entire family being affected. Diana tries to break into Martin's room, and he's unable to get any sleep all night. Wanting to isolate her victim further, Diana goes after Martin as he stays over the next night with his half-sister, Rebecca. Seeing her child, the only person she had left, leave her causes a lot of distress for Sophie, which makes Diana even more powerful. She scratches her name into the floor in Rebecca's apartment, but can't get to her before she's able to turn the lights back on. Martin protects himself by sleeping in the bathtub with a flashlight. The reason that she's not able to go into the light may be related to the slang term often associated with depression. You may hear that a depressed person is in a dark place right now, or that their mind went to a dark place. There's also evidence that sunlight is something that can help fight depression. In a journal written by RN Rachel Nall, it is explained that exposure to sunlight is thought to increase the brain's release of a hormone called serotonin. Serotonin is associated with boosting mood and helping a person feel calm and focused. At night, darker lighting triggers the brain to make another hormone called melatonin. This hormone is responsible for helping you sleep. This could explain why Martin, who is constantly trying to keep himself in the light to avoid Diana, is unable to get any sleep at night, outside of the fact that the little dude is just freaking terrified all the time. The next day, Rebecca searches the house for clues, and Diana locks her inside of her old room.
Stay away, Becca. I won't be set away again.
Another symbol of light versus shadow can be seen that afternoon when Martin and Sophie return to the house with some groceries. Sophie recommends that the three of them watch a movie, implying that Diana will be there. As much as I love the idea of this monster just chilling on the couch, munching down some popcorn, Martin suggests that maybe just him and his mom check out the movie. You can tell that Sophie's being manipulated as she responds, with her standing in the shade while Martin remains in the sunlight.
Mom?
Huh?
How about just you and me tonight? Okay?
We'll see.
During the movie, Diana comes for Martin, and when he runs, she attacks Sophie. This represents Sophie's condition getting so bad, it's about to cause hurt to her own son. So he flees back to Rebecca's place, where Diana tries to pull him under the bed, every little kid's worst nightmare. They all stay over at the house, and Sophie starts to realize that her illness is getting the better of her again. Not wanting Diana to find out that she's seeking help, she slips a note to her daughter before going to bed. Sophie realized that she was about to have a manic episode, and this is conveyed in the movie by Diana completely cutting off power to the house. As with anyone close to someone suffering from depression, it is those closest to them that are impacted first. And Diana goes after Martin, who protects himself using a candle. He escapes to get help from Rebecca, but Diana locks the two of them in the basement and goes after Rebecca's boyfriend, Brent, who is also staying in the house with them, but I just haven't really mentioned him yet because he hasn't come up yet. But he's the man, he really is. He ends up going to the cops to get help. Next, Diana attacks her host, Sophie, because she sees her going for a bottle of antidepressants. Since Sophie is Diana's only tie to reality, she must be left alive, but she is knocked out on the bedroom floor. Diana targets Rebecca and Martin, but the cops show up and she takes out one of them as well. In the end, Rebecca does what she was unable to do as a child and stands up for her mother against her oppressor. But in the end, Sophie realizes that her disease is hurting the ones that she loves the most, and like many victims of mental illness in real life, she puts an end to it in the most tragic way possible, because she believes that the only way to destroy Diana is to eliminate herself. Because of her connection to Sophie's mind, Diana is a scary horror movie antagonist in more ways than one. In particular, I think it's her tendency to keep herself hidden in the shadows that really makes this character hit differently, because this is what caused the people around Sophie to not realize that she was being haunted by Diana, just like depression in real life, where the symptoms don't always manifest themselves in very obvious ways. I know times are tough right now for a lot of people, and it's not easy to get into the sunlight right now while we're all quarantining ourselves inside, so if you or someone you know is struggling, I'll leave some resources in the description. Remember to subscribe to CZ's World for new horrors every week, ring that death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one, assuming we stay inside.